Excellent. Everybody hear me okay? Super. So we're going to look at value-driven cost management through data management. And first of all, my name is Ross Griffin, and I'm the founder of a commercial management digital QS practice. We have offices in Copenhagen and here in Ireland, and we have also a SaaS company, The Fifth Dimension. The scope of our presentation today is going to focus on a project we worked on. We're going to look at the delivery strategy and the integrated process, how that was embedded then in the project, and then the result, the outcome. But first of all, and I use this in all our presentations that I do, and it's what is value-driven cost management? And we've kind of defined it as an integrated collaborative approach to designing to cost, as well as continuous cost follow-up and control. So designing to cost, that's super important to us, of course, but that needs and means collaboration with the design team, with the other stakeholders, with the client, etc. So we're trying to change the dynamics of what the quantity surveyor does and is for the future. But first of all, let's have a look at the project. So this is a campus-style project, a GFA, gross floor area, about 160,000 square meters. We had approximately 26 buildings, 156 unfederated 3D models, 10 different stakeholder groups, and the plot size was about 750,000 square meters. So what we had to do initially was, how do we deal with 26 buildings? How do we deal with 156 unfederated models as cost managers? And how can we, take the information produced by others to make our delivery much more streamlined and value creation for the client? Just to give an indication of the different building sizes that we had, a number of them above 20,000 square meters, and then they go down from there. Different quality levels within the buildings, different functionality, etc. Just to give you an idea of kind of what we're dealing with in terms of this particular project. So for us, the delivery strategy, I would say, is, as we mentioned before, is quite important to us. It is about collaboration, it is about communication, and it's very much about integration with the other stakeholders and design teams. We've developed here a commercial management strategy, the KOSMOS roadmap that we call it. It identifies key deliverables within each of the phases. That includes assessment of 3D information, the quality of data, the quality of information, how we communicate that, the meetings that we will have along the timeline. We often take weekly meetings with each discipline lead along the project lifecycle to discuss what they have prepared and produced within the models, within their specifications, within their drawings. We do not wait until the end for this. This is a continuous process with the design teams. Effectively, it's the design teams that are producing our information at the end of the day. We're just restructuring it and reprocessing it. So it's very important that we have that close communication and collaboration. But the KOSMOS roadmap becomes something that's important to us and what we're trying to communicate with our clients. Understanding BIM, we have a lot of talk about it today. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it's very important, of course, to understand the information that you will be receiving at the different design stages. What is an LOD 300? How does that impact my process? What information will I be missing? How do I deal with the information that I'm missing? How do I manage that risk, that cost risk for us as QSs? It's super important, because just saying the information isn't in the model is not an answer. That's your problem. It's not the architects and engineers' problem. It's your problem, because you haven't communicated with the other consultants what you need and then brought them on the educational process of what is cost management quantity surveying and how they are benefiting you as a consultant. So in order for that to happen, the BIM execution plan, we've derived this level of information matrix that defines kind of each of the building components within the project, what we would expect in terms of takeoff. Will we quantify from the model? Will it be manual? What is the process there? That level of information relating to each component, and more importantly then, I would say, what's included in the component? What are we looking for? What's our measurement rule here for this particular component? An example would be foundations. You know, foundations as a geometry in a model tells us something, but not everything we need to know. So cubic meter for concrete, kilos for reinforcement, square meter for formwork, cubic meter for excavation, etc. All of this needs to be understood by the design team so that we can then get the information accurately and a good quality from them, and of course allow us to process. And then we've identified who delivers this. Is it the engineer, the architect, the client, the QS? So quite an important document, but something that's a lot of information discussed today about quality of information within the BIM execution plan. But if anybody reads your BIM execution plan, does it define the 5D process within it? The information you expect to receive from your QSs and your quantity surveying consultants? More than likely not, because the BIM execution plan focuses on design output in reality and not necessarily process of information for all stakeholder groups. And so what we've derived here is a 5D requirements for the BIM execution plan. So we've tried to specify what's important within the IFC export for 5D. It's not just an IFC export. If you export IFC, all the information from Rivet, the file becomes too heavy and big for our software when we use Costex to process that. So it's very important that you communicate this with your design team, so what you're actually getting is what you have identified within your BIM execution plan, that level of information that becomes important. Not all parameters are necessary. And what this allows us to do then is to manage the quality of information, which is what we're all about here, really. That's what all the presentations are about. It's about the quality of information, how we process it within our discipline and how we feed it back into the other disciplines. And in the accuracy, you know, and what is not included. That's very important from a QS's perspective, because we don't model everything. Our assessment of it is that we probably, in terms of direct construction, model about 60% of the building from a cost perspective, meaning that there's 40% of the building we don't model. In terms of the overall client investment, we actually only model around 40% of the entire project. So there's 60% of it there that we don't model. So we're never going to get everything from the model, and we need to make that clear, I would say. And then how do we structure this information? You know, how are we going to extract quantities? What does that look like? And scope gaps within the documentation and design information. So this is kind of how we set up the projects with the consultants and the clients. So it allows us then to move on to how we're going to actually process all of this information from the project. And we're a company about 20 people. We're not a huge organization. We don't have 50 or 100 QSs sitting behind us manually measuring. That's an impossibility for us. So data management is super important for us. So, as I mentioned before, 156 unfederated models. Each discipline has their own model for each of the buildings, but they had a campus-wide model. And obviously, we only work in IFC. We don't use Revit files because you can't guarantee that it's Revit on the project. It could be ArchiCAD, it's Tekla for structures, it's landscaping. So IFC becomes the communication tool here for sure. So how do we manage 26 buildings? How do we manage 156 models? And how do we estimate and prepare cost plans quickly for our clients that are accurate? So how we set up the project was we had a master file within Costex. That's a campus-wide file focusing on the entire project. Within that master file, obviously, we use ICMS, as mentioned there, International Construction Measurement Standards. That's our main structure for cost management. We use that in all our projects for data structure and analytics. We then coded, the model was identified in zones, so each building was a zone that allowed us to have an output for each building. So we estimate the project from a master file perspective, and then we have an output that went to each building. That's 26 buildings, but managed within one single process. That was for each of the disciplines, still unfederated at this stage, because if we federated the models, Costex actually wouldn't be able to manage it for us. So each of the models then was mapped to the master file. So this is an example of a ventilation system mapped to Costex. That allowed us then to update our cost plans, our cost estimates as the project went through the project life cycle. Elements change always, you know, the string of information that you have mapped within Costex, that also changes. So it's a case of data processing as opposed to quantification, which allowed us to do it within a small team, and I'll come to that in a minute. So the commercial management strategy. We had a number of documents to produce here. We had over 30 documents, a cost plan, a cost estimate for each building, or BOQ, external works, preliminaries, preambles, risks, overhead and profit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it wouldn't be possible for us to generate these documents without this flow of information and the standards that we have just discussed. So the integrated process, just to talk a little bit about this. From our perspective, BIM, as I mentioned, is an integrated process. We need to collaborate with all stakeholders in order for us to be able to work with the information produced by others. We cannot do it in isolation, and it's one of the biggest challenges for quantity surveying practices today, is that they still think that they can operate in the same way they did a number of years ago, but in a digital environment. It's impossible, because you need to collaborate. You need to be in the full project lifecycle, and you need to be able to take the conversations with the design teams. So from our perspective here, we would say that the design is a center and focal point. It could be the project. It depends on what terminology you use, and everybody feeds into that information and communicates across. That's why, as I mentioned, we take weekly meetings with each of our discipline leads, whether it's electrical, mechanical, architecture, the structure. We take it with their BIM coordinator and their modelers, as well as the designers, so that we are coordinating the quality of information here. That's not our role and responsibility. That's the design team to deliver it. But if we don't get the information in good quality, we can't do our job. So it falls on our shoulders to make sure we can do our job properly. So as I mentioned, that integrated process with each of the discipline leads, and again, that's identified in the KOSMOS roadmap, becomes key to delivering good quality information and receiving good quality information. So the design process from our perspective, the traditional model is the QS and cost manager sits at the end of the process. They wait for the information, they receive the information, whether it's 2D or 3D or specifications, and then they try to process that information. Traditionally, it's measuring from 2D, whether it's PDF or DWG. But what we need to now do is move that time and effort at the back end into the project, so that we are running on the project with everybody, building the knowledge base of that information being produced, so that we can process that information quite quickly at the back end. That means you're creating cost plans and bills of quantities along the process. It's not something you do at the back end. It's something that you're developing across the entire project lifecycle for the project. And in terms of data management, how we focused on data rather than estimating, how we focused on data management rather than quantification and quantity extraction. It was data management that allowed us to be able to process this information in a very quick and I would say accurate output. So we looked at data libraries for our costings within Costex. We focused on that, as I mentioned, that master file, allowing us to price the project once, and then an output being multiple buildings, multiple cost plans, multiple documents for the client. And right now the clients are still working in kind of analog, so they're PDF documents, they're Excel, depending on the contractor's needs. But in the future, that'll be a digitized workflow, I would say. So the result out of all of this on this project, and as I said, it's quite a large campus. We're taking a manual process, quantification. We're standardizing it using ICMS, using our digital tools like Costex. We're digitizing that process flow, so using the 3D models in order to quantify, and then we're automating it. So we can update the models. If the modeled information hasn't changed, you can update those quantities quite quickly by importing a new IFC. So that allowed us to focus on the project itself. The results, as I said, 26 plus documents, over 30 documents need to be prepared. We had a team of only 5 QSs working on this. That's 26 buildings, 160,000 square meters. The time for processing, I'll go through it at each of the design stages, but we had a priceable items of around 6,000 rather than 120,000. So if you had to price each building individually, it's impossible. You'd want a huge team behind you. Whereas the master file allowed us to be able to do it with, as I mentioned, just five resources on the back end and 2 resources during the project lifecycle. So you're able to reduce cost here to a certain degree for your clients. But really where the focus point for us and for the clients, I would say, is time. The big saving at the end of the day is time. So what did this process mean for the project? concept design, we're able to turn around a cost plan within 2 weeks, schematic within 3 weeks, detailed designs in 4 weeks with a BOQ output, a schedule of works that you're able to tender for on the marketplace. That's a 9-week process in terms of production of information and output for us on the back end of each design stage. But the work has been done during the process. Now, if we were to do that traditionally, we'd be looking at 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and 8 to 10 weeks potentially to produce that information. That means that, you can see yourself here, the overall saving when it comes to the project is 8 to 10 weeks on just the QS's activity. Now imagine what you could do in all other activities if you were to look at the project as data management rather than your traditional planning, costings, designing. It means that the process of preparation of the project pre-construction can be reduced, quality can increase, and collaboration becomes key focus point in the project. So for us here in terms of the conclusion, the 5 key takeaways: value-driven cost management for QSs. It's an integrated approach. You cannot sit at the peripheral of the project. You need to get into it. I would say that the digital QS needs to be involved from the beginning. So the BIM execution plan becomes a key aspect here, making sure that you get your requirements as a cost manager into the BIM execution plan. If it's not there, design teams won't deliver to your needs because it's not part of their contractual deliverables. So you need to get into the conversation and make sure that you get your needs in there. I would say regular communication, as I said, weekly discussions with each of the disciplines. What those discussions also do is it builds trust between you and the disciplines, whether it's the architect, the engineer, the mechanical, the electrical. In that trust, the QS and the engineer will reach out if they see an issue in terms of change management. It also means that your discussions on a weekly basis with the individuals doing the work can also be change and risk. It's not just about quality of information. And that builds a big collaboration between the cost managers who are also managing change and risk and the design team who are actually producing the project. As I mentioned, do not wait until the design is delivered. You need to work in parallel from a QS's perspective. And we're on the client stage. All of this becomes relevant for clients because they need to make the decision at the beginning to bring the stakeholders to the conversation at the beginning so that we can get it into the contracts. Because if things go to pot, which they do, everybody will revert back to their contract. And if it's not in there, we won't get what we want and the project will fail. So at the beginning, it's key to get the stakeholder groups around the table. It doesn't cost a lot to get them there. And I would say that quality is everybody's responsibility. Not quality of the build, but quality of information, quality of communication, quality of the team environment. That's everybody's responsibility. And cost is everybody's responsibility. In the same way that design is everybody's responsibility. As a stakeholder group with a project focus and a client focus, it's all a responsibility to work together to deliver. And without it, our projects will not succeed. Last point here I would say is that, I just skipped on, sorry about that. The last point is use your network for help and advice. We're learning, there's an awful lot of learning here today and an awful lot of specialists. Use the network to communicate and to ask questions and to get a better understanding. LinkedIn, of course, is a great platform, great tool. So I would say that for us, that's what we use. Find us on LinkedIn. We love talking about this and helping people to improve the process, and for us also to learn from you guys in terms of the issues or things that you're really kind of driving on projects that are adding value. But yeah, thank you very much. That's it from me. Much appreciated.